Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. And also check out our Patreon page. I'll put a link below. On Patreon, you're going to get the ability to get exclusive content, reviews that haven't been released yet, and also a discount code for 15% off of everything in our online web store. Hi, I'm Mike, owner of the In-Groove in Phoenix, Arizona. Today I want to talk to you about my favorite reissue label. My favorite reissue label also happens to be probably one of the worst music labels in existence today. And I kind of want to go over the label as a whole. And that label, of course, is Music Matters Jazz. I want to end this video on a high note, so I'm going to start off with all the things wrong with Music Matters, and then I'm going to finish with all the things they do right. So I've been a big Music Matters fan since the absolute beginning. In the beginning, they started off as pretty much a subscription service. It was 45 RPM only. That's what they started with. You purchased a subscription, you got your own number, so if you were number 147, all of your records came numbered, you were 147, and you got them all. After a while, they stopped that and they started doing a 33 RPM record. There was some internal shakeups at the time, and actually when they started doing 33 RPMs, I had the store at that point in time. So I was a dealer for Music Matters, and great product, but it was a very little known label. But when they started coming out with their 33s, I brought them in-house and I would play them in the store religiously. I can't tell you how many people that walked in the store who weren't jazz fans, who weren't, never even, jazz to them was Kenny G. This was jazz. They heard Art Blakey's Moanin', they would hear Blue Train, and they would hear one of these records and be like, man, that's awesome, what is that? The thing about the 33s at the time, they started off as $35, then they raised them to $45, which I can understand. They came out with a high quality product and it was worth 40 bucks. But what was great about the 33 RPM versus the 45 RPM series is the 45 RPM, even to this day, is really for avid audiophiles. Very few average record listeners are listening to 45 RPM. They don't want to deal with the inconvenience. If you're new to vinyl, you're used to digital, you're used to CDs, flipping a record over every 17 minutes is hard enough. Flipping a record over every song, every 2 songs, is more than a lot of people are going to take on. So when they came out with the 33 RPM series, that was kind of the sweet spot for them. Also, they kind of changed the mastering engineer formula. Steve Hoffman had something to do with the original stuff. He was mastering consultant, or he, with Kevin Gray, did those in tandem. When he left, and Kevin Gray was left to his own devices, there was also some upgrades at his studio, his mastering lab, some cables, AudioQuest cables, stuff along those lines. That was the sweet spot. Kevin Gray left to his own devices with an upgraded mastering facility at 33 RPM. I sold those records like hotcakes. And I sold those records like hotcakes to people who weren't jazz fans. And that was great. Whatever happened, they stopped getting the ability to make more, or they said they were going to be limited, and they were getting towards the end of the limited run. Limited for Music Matters is a very unique word. It means things other than limited, as you would associate them in the English language. So I got an email one time that we are no longer going to sell to dealers because we are not a fan of what dealers are doing as far as the price gouging. They essentially contested that dealers were not selling it for their MSRP. So they were going to bring everything in-house to eliminate that. So they weren't going to sell to me. They weren't going to sell to anybody. I said, all right, that's weird, because I didn't know of anybody that was doing that. All the big guys, the Acoustics, the Mo-Fis, all these guys that sold that product, Elusive Disc was the distributor, I believe. All the people that sold that product, they all sold it for the same price. I sold it for the same price. I had contacted them and I, said, what the he? And they said, well, we're going to keep selling to you because you don't sell online. At the time, we didn't have the website. Now you can buy everything from our website, www.theingroove.com. But at the time, we didn't have that. So, no problem. We're going to keep selling your product. Well, now we got into the funky, ever-changing price structure, which is weird because they complained that the product was being inflated to other people. Well, now they were doing it a couple weeks later. Now, we're not talking, they did their press release, and it wasn't months and months and years later that they started inflating the price. It was weeks later. they started inflating the price. Records went from $39.99, limited supplies, $49.99, $59, $69, $79, $99. Okay, you're dwindling your stock down. I can understand they're collectibles. They become more rare. You know, people want these records. They go up. You have less. You sell them for more. Well, all of a sudden there was more in the pipeline. Recent batch found. You lost 500 records. You just found a batch. So price would get ratcheted down again. Then we would start creeping up again. Okay, well, this kind of happened to the point where there was no more new supply of these 33 RPM records. So I think it was 2 years in the Christmas of maybe 2017 or 18. Maybe it was the beginning of, I think it was Christmas of 2018. They're doing them on the new SRX vinyl. The new SRX vinyl is similar to the old Mobile Fidelity Super Vinyl from the 70s and 80s. But there's a lot of companies that are doing it now. Mobile Fidelity also does it on their one-steps. I think, maybe is it Bridge Over Troubled Water was the first Mobile Fidelity one-step on forward, to where they were doing super vinyl. So there's other companies that offer, and from what they say, it's a more expensive process. So they introduced all these new titles, which was great because they were new titles at $59.99 on SRX vinyl. Well, you know, that's not wonderful, but it wasn't great because, you know, we're now talking for $60 for something that used to be $35 and then $39.99. They had a price increase back in maybe 2016. So it was going to be more money. But in the land of super expensive records, the Electric Recording Company, Mobile Fidelity One-Steps, Acoustic Sounds UHQR, there's a new Artesian series by Sam Records. There's a lot of high-end records. This was still a deal for what you were getting. This is a home run product. And when they first came out, you can order them by a set or you can order them individually, and there were supplies. I didn't think there was anything wrong with that. Everything was kosher. I mean, it was solid. This is nothing wrong with this business model. If you want to manufacture products and sell it direct, the other shenanigans was annoying. But if you want to manufacture products and sell it direct, there's nothing wrong with that. This is America. You could be capitalist. They did Blue Train, and they sold it for more money. And their reasoning was, you know, we were selling the original one for an inflated price. We don't feel it'd be fair to come out with the new version, the SRX, that's even better, and sell it for less money. I was okay with that. You could get them. There were a decent amount of them. No problem. The thing is with these titles that Music Matters does is they do some of the most iconic jazz records of all time. I do a lot of videos on YouTube, and you can probably tell by my videos, I've mostly covered rock records. But when I'm home and I'm listening with myself and on my gear, and mostly what I listen to is jazz. I'm primarily a jazz fan. My store specializes in jazz, and that's what I listen to most of all. I listen to everything, but jazz is where it's at for me. So some of these albums to me are absolutely iconic, where people hold up Nirvana's Nevermind up here, and they hold up the Sgt. Pepper up here. You know, an album like Lee Morgan's The Sidewinder is like Dark Side of the Moon to a lot of people. To me, this is an absolute amazing record. Quintessential American music, American jazz, coveted all over the world. This is legendary music, and this should be in the hands of everybody. And I'm not saying these companies should be giving it away, but it should be available to everybody. And it should be available to everybody in a good sounding format. And, you know, when they were doing that first SRX series, it was there. It was for a while, and obviously they said it was limited, and it kind of went away. Well, then they started doing some reissues. So the summer of this, or after Christmas of this year, the beginning of the year, they advertised the new SRX on previous stuff. So, for instance, you'll see I have the original 33 RPM Art Blakey's Moanin', my absolute all-time favorite record, by the way. And then they did it in SRX vinyl. Now they raised the price at this point to $79.99. Okay, well, at least it's available. Not everybody can afford it, but at least it's available. And you know, to be honest, it was a deal at the time because you were getting $200 for an original Music Matters version. And, you know, you could get the nice SRX for $79.99. Still not a bad deal, right? Well, what ended up happening is it was like mania. You couldn't, I don't know if they released 50 of them, and their website crashed. They were sold out after a day. More popped up a couple, 4 or 5 days later. They said it was because they couldn't handle shipping. You know, then it got even worse when they did the following 2 titles. I think it was Lee Morgan's In the Search for New Land. The website, you know, they announced we're going to sell them at this point in time, at 11 o'clock, log on. I'm logging on, you know, I'm not a dealer for them anymore. I'm logging on. I love the labels, my favorite. I'm hitting refresh like it's a Black Friday special, and refresh, you know, it was a 10:59, no records, 11 o'clock, the website crashes, like 11:02, I get it to load. Oh, we're sold out. What the he? I mean, that's absolutely ridiculous. That is a major gripe, if you ask me. These records should not be so scarce that you alienate a huge amount of people. I loved, and again, jazz was my passion. I loved getting people to come into my store who were not even remotely jazz customers. A guy in his 20s, a girl in their 20s. They hear Art Blakey pounding away on Moanin', and they're like, I gotta have it. Fantastic. And then that customer comes back and they're like, man, this is unbelievable. We haven't been able to take it off the turntable. What sounds like it? And then I would get to do what I loved and check out this. Art Blakey's great on this, or maybe check out this. Absolutely fantastic. Well, now we can't do that anymore because we've essentially eliminated that customer from the marketplace, because now these great stalwart albums don't exist. We're kind of doing it with the Tone Poets, and I'll talk more about the Tone Poets in another video. The Tone Poets are essentially half of Music Matters. Joe, it's Ron and Joe. Joe left and went over to Blue Note, and they're making them. And what they're doing is absolutely a home run, and I am selling wheelbarrows full of those records. They are absolutely fantastic. I talk about them on this channel all the time. Tone Poets and Music Matters, same exact quality, $35 on the Tone Poets. You can go to the website, you can click in Tone Poet, you can see the titles. The thing about the Tone Poets is they are, you know, if you're going to categorize Music Matters stuff, or you're going to categorize the Blue Note catalog, you know, A, B, and C, and D tiered products, the Tone Poets are for mostly, you know, they're C and D titles. They're titles that haven't been pressed in a while, and they haven't been pressed in a while for a reason. They're not the stalwart titles. They're not Blue Train. It's not Art Blakey's Moan, and it's not just Sidewinder. It's not, you know, Herbie Hancock's Maiden Voyage, which those are, you know, A-tier albums, some of the best jazz records of all time. If you're going to put a top 10 list together, most of those would probably be on the top 10 greatest jazz albums of all time. Those are the albums, and they're good for a reason. They're good. People love them for a reason, but also I loved them because they drew people into the genre of jazz. And those titles are not, unfortunately, on market right now anymore. So I'm still getting people, but you know, it's harder when you're talking about some of the titles. They're a little lesser known titles. Musically, they're great. But in the past, those titles have always, you know, some of the Tone Poet stuff have always been for more, you know, guys who were more into jazz, and this was your deeper catalog dive stuff. You know, where you correlate that with rock. Everybody loves Dark Side of the Moon, but not everybody's a Piper at the Gates, a Dawn fan, or a metal fan. You know, those are typically your Pink Floyd, your hardcore Pink Floyd fans. And that's kind of how it is with these jazz titles. Yeah, Piper at the Gates of Dawn is a mind-blowing album. If you're a Floyd fan, everybody loves Dark Side of the Moon. My 15-year-old daughter knows Dark Side of the Moon. Everybody knows Dark Side of the Moon. So that's gets people into those other albums. And unfortunately, those are missing from the marketplace. And what really needs to take place is Blue Note needs to pump out these titles on their Tone Poet line. These titles need to be in print. They need to be in print because it brings people into jazz. And that's just the facts. I see it all the time on the front lines at a music store. And it's ever so true. And this needs to be in print stuff. I mean, the tapes are there, the tapes exist. High quality, all analog jazz, the way it was meant to be heard, needs to be in print. Now let's talk about, you know, so that's my gripe about, you know, again, manufacturer demand. Let's make a product, let's make it really, really limited, and not limited because we don't make a bunch. They probably make, who knows, 500, 1,000, you know, I don't know. They don't really say publicly. There's people on forums, oh yeah, there's only 500, there's 1,000, there's 15, but there's no public, there's 1,500 of these, that's it. So these things kind of just keep trickling into the marketplace. It's, you know, it's like a collectible record store that happens to make records. We're going to bleed a little into the system, price goes up. We're going to bleed a little more, price goes up, backs down, you know, price gets back up. We're going to bleed a little bit more. This is absolutely shenanigans at this point. This needs to stop. It needs to stop. If you're going to be a record distributor, you're going to be a record label, make the records, sell the records, be done with it. Let's not have these infinite accordion type higher, lower, some are available, some are, that just pisses people off. And I don't want to piss people off. I want people to come in a nice, good mood, being able to get their records. I mean, when this last drop took place and everybody told me that they were waiting online and, you know, they're clicking refresh and nobody got it. Did you get it? Everybody was pissed. I don't know anybody that got these records. And I'm telling you, I got a stalwart amount of people in my store that are jazz fans. I'm the jazz store. People know that. Nobody got them. Ridiculous. Now let's talk about all the things that Music Matters does right. And this is great because I hear people on YouTube. I heard one guy's YouTube channel and he said, Music Matters are overrated. These are not the way these records are supposed to sound. If you were in Van Gelder's studio, this is not what was heard. This is not the magic of the Van Gelder. What's on those original records are what, this is what you want. BS. If you're watching this, you know who you are. That's BS. What Van Gelder mastered on the records is not what was on the tape. Everybody knows, that's a hardcore jazz fan, that he tweaked the mastering to suit the turntables and the audience at the time. And who was buying Blue Note records in the 50s? It was primarily Black America. And Black America weren't playing these records on the most sophisticated Garrard turntables with the most sophisticated gear. Not happening. It wasn't the case. So he kind of worked around cheap, crappy record players in his mastering. Rudy Van Gelder eliminated all the really ultra low bass. He did cuts at 50 hertz and 15 hertz, and he bumped at 100 hertz. So he tweaked the sound for the turntables at the time to get those records sounding sweet. What Music Matters does is they are leaving essentially what is on the tape on the records. And in 2020, as opposed to 1957, we've got gear that can really bring out what was on that reel-to-reel tape onto a record. Now, is it ever going to be as good as a reel-to-reel tape? It's not going to be. But I have all the original jazz records. They're absolutely historic documents of American history. These records should be in the Smithsonian. You know, what do we got here? I got a nice original mono blue train. This, you should go to the Smithsonian. You should be able to see this record hanging up next to Abe Lincoln's top hat. This is iconic Americana at its very best. Same thing, cool strutting. Beautiful, Sonny Clark. I got an absolute minty copy. Multi-$1,000 record. I've got the Music Matters around here somewhere. The Music Matters sounds better. I don't have an axe to grind here. I don't know why some people want to trash on Music Matters. Maybe they want to prop up the value of their original pressings. That's not necessary. These puppies aren't going down. These are, again, American historical treasures. They're going to keep going up and up and up. And it's just going to be the case because they're rare, they're limited, they're the originals, and man, they're killer music. They're not going down. But people say, you know, again, what's on the tape is what... No, it's not. I talked to you about how I'm a tape fan. Here's Lee Morgan's Sidewinder on 15 IPS studio reel-to-reel tape done by the Tape Project. Tape Project essentially does, they do real-time live transfers of titles. And again, they've done a couple of Blue Notes. This is Lee Morgan's Sidewinder. This is on 15 IPS tape. This is done almost a one-to-one transfer of the original master tape. So what's on the original master tape is on this. And I've heard it. I don't know if a lot of guys can say that, but I know what the master tape sounds like. It sounds like this. And you know the closest thing to this? Music Matters records. Nothing. What you're hearing on an original don't sound anything like this. The amount of dynamic range and the amount of bass on this reel-to-reel tape is mind-boggling good. It does not exist in any other format except for this tape. But what is the absolute closest thing on planet Earth to what is on this tape? What those musicians played? What was in Van Gelder's, in his house, in his studio, his parents' house, his studio? The absolute closest thing on planet Earth to the original tapes are Music Matters. And they are absolutely great. I think Kevin Gray, who masters the stuff, is the absolute best jazz mastering engineer in the world. I just don't think there's anybody that can master jazz records. It's just magic. It's absolutely magic. What he takes off of those tapes and he's able to cut on vinyl is unbelievably good. But again, the dynamic range on this tape, the absolute, when Lee Morgan kicks in, and I mean, it absolutely jumps at you and screams at you. It's not even on the Music Matters, but it's close. The bass is so low. It's not on the Music Matters stuff, but it's close. But I'll tell you what it's not on. It's definitely not on the original pressings. Music Matters are going to get you absolutely, positively as close as you can get to what was going on in that studio, what is on that master tape. Look, I mean, the bottom line is this is the end-all be-all. It's reel-to-reel, but it's there's virtually absolutely no tapes in, there's a couple hundred tapes that are in print. Almost all of those are indie classical records or indie jazz records. There's virtually nothing of this caliber musically in print, and they're astronomically expensive. This is $450 for one of these. The machines that play them are tens of thousands of dollars. They're astronomical money. So it's obviously not feasible for 99.9% of the people in the world that listen to music on vinyl. The people that do have it, though, they know what I'm talking about. They know what it's all about. But what they're putting on vinyl, and it's not, I don't want to say Music Matters. It's not what Music Matters is putting on vinyl. It is what Kevin Gray is putting on vinyl, and it's the production that Music Matters contributes as far as the actual product. This high quality, look at that jacket. High quality tip-on jacket with session photography, super high gloss. So obviously Music Matters started this. They took upon themselves to say, we're going to put out an absolutely high quality product, unparalleled in the industry. And they did it. But so are the Tone Poets. Don't let anybody tell you that the Tone Poets are any less of these. The only thing the Tone Poets don't have going for them is the caliber of music. But they are absolutely, positively every bit as good as this. It is the same jacket. Some people tell me, it feels a little thinner. I mean, give me a break. It is the jacket quality is the same. Kevin Gray, I'm sure he's not saying, well, this is, a Tone Poet, not a Music Matters, so let me fudge this record. Absolutely BS. There's been some talk online about some of the titles have some warble in them. Some of the pianos sound a little bit off. Andrew Hill is one of the titles. I've got the original Andrew Hill, and I mean, that warble is on the original. It's there. Maybe the tape is not as in good enough shape, but man, you have to get really down in the weeds. You have to be really analytical to hear that, okay, maybe it's about 20% worse than it was 50 years ago when that record was new. It's on the original tape. It's on this new one. But, is it 20% worse on the tape? Who knows? It might just be that these new cuts are so revealing, you just hear it more. And the Van Gelder stuff, the vinyl's not as quiet as this stuff is pressed at RTI. The vinyl is not as quiet on that old plasticite stuff. Again, I don't have a horse in this. I got all the originals. I don't care if they go up or not. I'll be dead when they're sold anyways. I'm not going to sell them in my lifetime. My son is. So I don't care if they go down to zero. I don't care if they go up to $20,000 a record. They're not going anywhere. I'm going to have the originals. I'm going to have the Music Matters. Originals are going to sit on the shelf, occasionally be played. Music Matters are going to be worn out, and I'm going to have to replace them with either more Music Matters stuff or whatever replaces it in the future that is as good. Hopefully, Tone Poets. The Tone Poets series should live on with some of the better titles. So again, I wanted to end on a happy note because I know I've rambled on for many, many minutes here, but the quality of record put out by Music Matters, when they came out with their record and when they came out the 33s, there was nothing like it in the world. It is, I give credit to those guys, and as much as I don't like the crappy shenanigans that go on, man, you got to give a lot of credit to that label for putting out a product at the time that was just mind-boggling more superior than anything out on the market, and not by a little. It was by a lot. You know, there was audiophile labels. I mean, you know, look at some of the old stuff some of these audiophile labels put out, and then hold that next to a Music Matters record. It's like, holy cow. You could tell they went all out, and they really did a hell of a job. But we all know that people pay through the nose for them. Blue Note knows that. You know, Blue Note's owned by Capitol. Capitol knows that. That's why they did the Tone Poets. Well, now let's get the good titles out there. Let's get more people into jazz. I'm tired of the condemnation that jazz is Kenny G. I want to expel that from the American psyche as much as possible, and I'm going to do my part to do it. But we're not going to do it with having, you know, crappy 75th anniversary digital sounding paper, crappy cardboard in print. Nobody wants that. I mean, I guess they sell, but, you know, who do they sell to? And now you got all these labels in Europe, all these copyright labels that are selling records that I absolutely refuse to sell. Wax Time Records. If you're buying Wax Time jazz records, you're a putz. You need to not be doing that. Those sound like crap. They're CD copies. You want CD copy records where they scribble out the Blue Note and you got shoddy artwork? What are you doing? That's part of the reason that Blue Note needs to put in production these high quality reissues. They need to be sitting in some record stores, not my record store because I ain't selling that crap, but they need to be putting these things side to side with one another and let the customer see, well, I think I want this. I don't want that Wax Time crap. This is where you need to be at. I won't even take a Wax Time record and trade. I get people like, oh man, yeah, I found out about this, and can I take these in trade? Nope. I don't want them because I don't want to saddle crappy, low quality records on anybody. You know, Spanish bootleg, you know, if it's one thing if the title is a concert or something that doesn't exist. You know, some of that stuff I put in the store because it doesn't exist. It shows, that's a different story. But when you're taking albums that are actually in print or were recently in print and you're making low quality productions of those, I don't want to have anything to do with them. I'm not going to sell that crap in my store. But kudos to Music Matters because it is, hands down, even to this day, they are putting out the most superior product on the market. And it's only second to Tone Poet, the actual Blue Note stuff, again, because of the title choices. But don't forget to subscribe to my channel. We're going to do more videos like this in the future. I'm sure the comments are going to be blown up of a bunch of people pissing and moaning, agreeing, you know. It is what it is. Again, these are just my thoughts. Maybe they're not facts, but my wife says I think I'm always right, so either I am always right or maybe I'm not. I don't know. You guys be the judge. Until next time.